The stars looked different from Jupiter orbit. Captain James Walker stood at the main viewport of the HSS Defiant, watching the massive gas giants whirling storms below. His weathered hands clasped behind his back, knuckles white with tension. 20 years of space combat experience told him these might be humanity's final hours. The Defiant's bridge crew worked in tense silence, broken only by the soft beeping of sensor equipment and quiet status reports. They all knew what was coming. The Dominion's main fleet had just passed Saturn's orbit, over 10,000 warships strong. Against them stood the last 300 ships of the human fleet, gathered here in humanity's last stand. Status report on the resonance cascade system, Walker called out, his voice steady despite the weight pressing down on his shoulders. The experimental weapon was their only hope, their last chance to prove that humanity wouldn't go quietly into the night. Integration at 68%, Captain, replied Lieutenant Rogers from her engineering station. Chief Miller says he needs at least 2 more hours before the system will be combat ready. Walker nodded, knowing they wouldn't have 2 hours. The Dominion fleet was pushing their engines hard, eager to finish what they'd started 3 years ago when they first attacked Earth's colonies. Since then, it had been a steady retreat, watching human worlds fall one by one to the aliens' superior technology. But the Defiant was different. She was humanity's newest warship, built with technology reverse-engineered from crashed Dominion vessels. More importantly, she carried the results of Project Thunderbolt, a weapon that could theoretically exploit a fundamental weakness in Dominion shield systems. If it worked, it would change everything. If it failed, humanity would join the long list of civilizations the Dominion had crushed beneath their boots. Captain, called out Jones from the sensor station, his young face pale in the blue glow of his screens. Long-range scans picking up something strange. The Dominion fleet, they're splitting up. Walker strode to the sensor station, studying the tactical display. The massive red blob representing the Dominion fleet was indeed separating into 3 distinct groups. It was a departure from their usual tactics of overwhelming force. They're being cautious, Walker muttered, more to himself than the crew. They know about the Defiant. They know we've built something new. The realization hit him like a physical blow. If the Dominion was showing caution, it meant their spies had learned about Project Thunderbolt. They didn't know exactly what it did, but they knew it was dangerous enough to change their standard tactics. Send word to Admiral Stone, Walker ordered. The Dominion knows about the Defiant. They'll try to take us out first. He paused, considering their options. And get me Chief Miller. Now. Minutes later, the chief engineer's gruff voice came through the bridge speakers. Miller here, Captain. We're working as fast as we can, but rushing the integration could blow us all to hell. We don't have a choice, Tom, Walker replied, using the engineer's first name, something he rarely did. The Dominion is coming for us specifically. How close to their ships do we need to be for the resonance cascade to work? There was a long pause. Theoretically, no more than 50,000 kilometers. But, Captain, the equations we're working with, they're more complex than anything humanity has ever attempted. We're talking about manipulating quantum fields in ways that shouldn't be possible. That's why they'll never see it coming, Walker said. Keep working. We'll buy you all the time we can. He turned to his tactical officer. Lieutenant Reed, plot a course deeper into Jupiter's gravity well. We'll use the radiation belts to mask our energy signature. The massive warship turned gracefully, its dark hull gleaming in Jupiter's reflected sunlight. The Defiant was beautiful in a functional way, sleek yet powerful, with none of the ornate designs the Dominion favored. She was built for one purpose, to fight back. As they descended toward Jupiter's upper atmosphere, Walker received a priority message from Admiral Stone. The old admiral's face appeared on his private screen, looking even more tired than Walker felt. Jim, our long-range scouts just reported in. The Dominion fleet isn't just being led by any commander. The Supreme Commander himself is heading this operation. His flagship has been confirmed among the approaching forces. Walker's jaw tightened. The Supreme Commander was notorious for his hatred of humanity, viewing them as uppity primitives who needed to be taught their place in the galaxy. He'd personally overseen the destruction of Mars' colony, broadcasting the deaths of 2 million colonists as a warning to Earth. Understood, Admiral. Request permission to engage the Supreme Commander's group directly once the resonance cascade is ready. Stone's expression was grim. Granted. But Jim, if this doesn't work, if the Defiant falls, I'm ordering the rest of the fleet to make a run for deep space. We'll scatter to the stars, preserve what's left of our species. It won't come to that, Walker said with more confidence than he felt. The Defiant will prove what humanity is capable of. We'll show them that underestimating us was their biggest mistake. The Admiral nodded slowly. Good hunting, Captain. Stone out. Walker turned back to his crew, seeing the same mix of fear and determination on every face. They'd all lost someone to the Dominion. Friends, family, entire communities, gone because an alien empire decided humanity didn't deserve to exist among the stars. All hands, this is the captain, he announced shipwide. In less than an hour, we'll engage the largest Dominion fleet ever assembled. They think they know what we're capable of. They think they can predict our every move. Today, we prove them wrong. Today, we show them that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our numbers. It's our ability to do the impossible when our backs are against the wall. He paused, watching Jupiter's massive form fill more of their viewport. Every human who has fallen to the Dominion, every colony they've burned, every life they've taken, it all comes down to this moment. We carry humanity's hopes with us. Remember that. Walker out. The bridge fell silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now. The fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by something stronger. Purpose. Contact. Jones called out suddenly. Multiple Dominion warships entering detection range. They're moving to surround our position. Walker smiled grimly. Let them come. Let them think they had the Defiant trapped against Jupiter's gravity well. They didn't understand what humanity had achieved, how their relentless attacks had pushed human innovation to heights never before imagined. Chief Miller, he called over the comm. Time's up. Is the resonance cascade ready? Not quite, came the reply, accompanied by the sound of frantic activity. But it's as ready as it's going to be. We'll have one shot at this, Captain. If the calculations are wrong. They're not wrong, Walker said firmly. Because they can't be. All hands. Battle stations. Humanity's future begins now. The Defiant's engines hummed to life, her revolutionary design allowing her to move in ways that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Above them, the first wave of Dominion warships began their attack run, their purple-tinted shields glowing with deadly promise. The final battle for humanity's survival was about to begin, and one human warship was about to change everything. Deep in the engineering section of the HSS Defiant, Chief Engineer Tom Miller wiped sweat from his forehead as he studied the pulsing core of the resonance cascade system. The experimental weapon looked deceptively simple, a sphere of crystalline material surrounded by rings of spinning quantum sensors, but its simplicity was an illusion. Inside that sphere, laws of physics were being bent in ways that would have seemed impossible just 3 years ago. Chief, called out one of his engineers, pointing to a screen filled with rapidly changing numbers. The containment field is fluctuating again. We're seeing microfractures in the quantum matrix. Miller rushed to the console, his experienced eyes scanning the data streams. The Dominion's attack on Mars had killed his wife and daughter, but it had also given humanity its first real look at their shield technology. The aliens used quantum fields to create their supposedly impenetrable defenses. Now, humanity would use that same science against them. Reroute power from secondary systems, Miller ordered, his fingers flying across the control panel. And get me a direct line to the bridge. Captain needs to know what we're dealing with. The ship shuddered as the first wave of Dominion weapons fire struck their shields. The Defiant's revolutionary design absorbed the impact better than any previous human vessel, but they couldn't take sustained fire for long. "Bridge, this is engineering," Miller called out. "Captain, we've got a problem. The resonance cascade is stable, but barely. Using it at anything less than optimal power could tear us apart." On the bridge, Captain Walker gripped his command chair as another blast rocked the ship. Through the main viewport, he could see dozens of Dominion warships moving into attack position. Their purple-tinted shields created an ethereal glow against Jupiter's swirling storms. "Define tear us apart, Chief," Walker replied, keeping his voice steady for the crew's benefit. "Are we talking about damage or complete destruction?" "Complete molecular dissociation," Miller answered grimly. "The quantum fields we're generating. They're like nothing we've ever seen. One wrong move and we'll create a cascade failure that'll make an antimatter explosion look like a firecracker." Walker absorbed this information as he watched more Dominion ships appear from hyperspace. They were taking no chances, committing overwhelming force to destroy the Defiant before she could use her mysterious new weapon. "Lieutenant Reed," Walker called to his tactical officer, "bring us about. Plot a course between those two heavy cruisers. Let's show them what this ship can do." The Defiant moved with impossible grace for a vessel her size. The inertial dampeners Miller had designed allowed maneuvers that Dominion tactical computers classified as physically impossible. They expected human ships to move like lumbering beasts. The Defiant danced. "Multiple targeting locks," Jones shouted from his sensor station. "They're coordinating their fire." "Evasive pattern Delta," Walker ordered. "Chief Miller, what do you need to get that weapon ready?" "Time and power," Miller replied through gritted teeth. "The quantum matrix needs to be perfectly aligned. Rush it, and we'll have more than just the Dominion to worry about." The ship's AI displayed possible escape routes on the tactical screen, but Walker saw they were running out of options. The Dominion was hurting them, using their superior numbers to force the Defiant into a vulnerable position. Suddenly, a new signal caught everyone's attention. A massive ship dropped out of hyperspace, easily 3 times the size of a standard Dominion cruiser. Its hull was decorated with intricate patterns of pulsing light, marking it as the Supreme Commander's flagship. "All hands, brace for impact," Walker shouted as the flagship's main weapon charged up. The beam that struck the Defiant was more powerful than anything they'd encountered before. Shields flared bright enough to blind the bridge crew momentarily. "Shields at 40%, Rogers reported, her fingers dancing across her console to reroute emergency power. "One more hit like that, and we're done." In engineering, Miller watched in horror as the quantum matrix began to destabilize. The massive energy surge from the hit had affected the delicate calibrations they'd spent hours perfecting. But as he studied the readings, something caught his eye. "Captain," he called out, excitement creeping into his voice. "That hit, it showed us something. The frequency of their main weapon. It's operating on the same quantum principles as their shields. If we can match that frequency," Walker understood immediately, "we can use their own weapon's energy to power the resonance cascade." "Exactly," Miller confirmed. "But we'll need to get hit again, and this time we need to be ready for it. I'm going to modify the shield harmonics to channel the energy directly into the quantum matrix." It was an insane plan. The kind of desperate gamble that only humans would attempt. Any other species would consider it suicide to deliberately take a hit from the most powerful weapon in the Dominion fleet. "How close do we need to be?" Walker asked, already formulating a plan. "Point-blank range," Miller replied. "Their weapon's energy disperses over distance. We need to take the hit at less than 10 kilometers to capture enough power." Walker looked at his bridge crew. They didn't need to speak. Every human on board knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about showing the galaxy that humanity would never submit, never accept defeat, even in the face of impossible odds. "All hands," Walker announced shipwide. Prepare for close-quarters combat. Chief Miller, you'll get your power source. Lieutenant Reed, plot a direct course for the Supreme Commander's flagship. Let's introduce ourselves properly. The Defiant's engines roared to life, pushing the ship straight toward the massive alien vessel. Dominion ships scrambled to intercept, but the human warship's superior maneuverability allowed it to slip through their formation. They're charging their main weapon, Jones reported, his voice tense but controlled. Hold course, Walker ordered. Chief Miller, status of the quantum matrix. Recalibrated and ready, Miller replied. But Captain, if this doesn't work. It'll work, Walker cut him off. Because it has to. All hands, brace for impact in 3, 2, 1. The Supreme Commander's flagship fired, its beam of concentrated energy striking the Defiant head-on. The human warship's shields flared brilliantly, channeling the massive surge of power directly into the experimental weapon systems. In engineering, Miller watched in awe as the quantum matrix stabilized, powered by the very weapon meant to destroy them. The crystalline sphere at the heart of the resonance cascade began to pulse with an otherworldly light. Energy capture successful, he shouted over the comm. Quantum matrix is charged and stable. Captain, we're ready. On the bridge, Walker allowed himself a small smile. The Dominion had just given them exactly what they needed. Now it was time to show them humanity's response. All power to the resonance cascade, he ordered. Let's show them what happens when they push humanity too far. The experimental weapon began to power up, its energy readings climbing past anything human instruments were designed to measure. The fate of Earth, of all humanity, now rested on what would happen in the next few seconds. The space between the Defiant and the Supreme Commander's flagship crackled with energy. Lightning-like tendrils of quantum energy danced across the human warship's hull as the resonance cascade system reached full power. The weapon's distinctive hum echoed through every deck, a sound unlike anything ever heard on a human vessel before. Energy levels are off the charts, Miller reported from engineering, his voice tight with tension. The containment fields are holding, but just barely. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it now. Walker watched as more Dominion ships moved to surround them. They were trapped between Jupiter's swirling storms below and the alien armada above. But for the first time since the war began, he saw something new in the Dominion's tactics. Hesitation. They're afraid, Lieutenant Reed said, voicing what everyone on the bridge had noticed. Look at their formation. They're keeping their distance. A harsh laugh echoed through the bridge speakers. It took everyone a moment to realize it was coming from the main communication channel. The Supreme Commander himself was hailing them. Brave little humans, the alien's voice dripped with contempt, translated by the ship's computers. Always so creative in your final moments. Did you think we wouldn't notice the energy readings from your vessel? Whatever weapon you've built, it cannot save you now. Walker signaled for the channel to be muted. Chief Miller, what's the status of the quantum field? It's stable, but different from our simulations, Miller replied. The energy we absorbed from their weapon. It's creating patterns we've never seen before. The quantum resonance is spreading faster than we predicted. Before Walker could respond, the ship's sensors blared a warning. The Dominion fleet was powering up their weapons. Not just the flagship this time. Every ship within range was preparing to fire. They're not taking chances anymore, Jones called from his station. Reading multiple targeting locks. They're going to hit us with everything they have. Walker's mind raced. The resonance cascade was ready, but they hadn't planned for this scenario. Their original strategy called for targeting the Supreme Commander's flagship first, using it as a proof of concept. But with the entire fleet preparing to fire. Chief Miller, he called out suddenly. The quantum resonance you mentioned, could it affect multiple ships at once? There was a pause as Miller ran the calculations. Theoretically, yes, the field would propagate through their shield frequencies. But Captain, we've never tested it at this scale. The energy requirements would be met by their own weapons, Walker finished. Just like before. but multiplied. Jones, how many ships are charging weapons? 217, sir. All within a 50,000-kilometer radius. Walker smiled. The Dominion's greatest strength, their overwhelming numbers and firepower, was about to become their greatest weakness. Chief Miller, prepare to channel all incoming energy directly into the resonance cascade. Lieutenant Reed, rotate our shield harmonics to match the frequency we recorded from their last attack. Sir. Reed looked uncertain. That would weaken our shields against their weapons. Exactly, Walker replied. We're not going to defend against their attack. We're going to absorb it. Understanding dawned on the bridge crew's faces. It was the kind of plan that made humans unique among the galaxy's species, using an enemy's strength against them in ways they'd never expect. The Supreme Commander's voice crackled through the speakers again. Your silence speaks volumes, humans. Know that your defeat will be remembered as the moment when your species finally learned its place in the universe. Walker reopened the channel. Actually, we were just doing some final calculations. But you're right about one thing. This moment will be remembered, just not the way you think. He closed the channel before the alien could respond. All hands braced for multiple impacts. Chief Miller, on my mark, activate the resonance cascade. Time seemed to slow as hundreds of energy weapons powered up across the Dominion fleet. Their purple-tinted shields pulsed in sync, creating a stunning display against the backdrop of Jupiter's storms. Enemy weapons at 90% charge, Jones reported. Hold position, Walker ordered. They needed the aliens to commit fully to their attack. 95%. In engineering, Miller's hands hovered over the resonance cascade controls. The quantum matrix was humming louder now, as if sensing what was coming. All ships, weapons locked. Steady. Walker gripped his chair as the Dominion fleet prepared to fire. Everything hinged on this moment. The space around the Defiant lit up as hundreds of energy beams struck simultaneously. The ship's shields flared brilliantly, absorbing rather than deflecting the massive energy surge. Warning alarms blared throughout the vessel as systems were pushed far beyond their designed limits. Now, Chief Miller, activate the cascade. Miller slammed his hand down on the activation panel. The crystalline sphere at the heart of the weapon pulsed once, twice, and then released a wave of quantum energy unlike anything ever seen in human space. The wave spread outward at near light speed, invisible except where it intersected with Dominion shields. There, it created a spectacular reaction. The aliens' purple barrier fields flickered, destabilized, and then collapsed completely as the quantum resonance disrupted their fundamental structure. It's working, Jones shouted, his professional demeanor cracking with excitement. Dominion shields are failing across the entire fleet. On the bridge of his flagship, the Supreme Commander watched in horror as his fleet's impenetrable defenses evaporated. The impossible had happened. The primitives had found a way to turn his own technology against him. The wave continued to spread, touching ship after ship. Without their shields, the Dominion vessels were far more vulnerable than human ships. They'd relied so heavily on their superior defenses that their hull armor was relatively light. Send word to Admiral Stone, Walker ordered. Tell the fleet to target any ship that's lost its shields. Focus on their engine sections first. The human fleet, which had been holding position at the edge of the battle, now surged forward. What had seemed like a hopeless last stand was transforming into humanity's first real chance at victory. Captain, Miller's voice came through the comm. The quantum matrix is still stable. We can fire again if needed. Walker looked at his tactical display. The Dominion fleet was in chaos. Ships were trying to retreat, but their formation had been too tight. They were colliding with each other in their panic to escape. Belay that, Chief, he replied. Save the power. I think we've made our point. The Supreme Commander's voice came through the comm one final time. But now the arrogance was gone. What? What have you done? We did exactly what humans always do, Walker answered calmly. We looked at something impossible, and then we found a way to do it anyway. Now shall we discuss the terms of your surrender? The battle wasn't over yet. Many Dominion ships still had weapons, and they were far from defenseless. But everything had changed. The myth of their invincibility had been shattered, and every ship in their fleet now knew that humanity had found a way to strip away their greatest advantage. The human warship that changed everything had lived up to its name. Now the real war could begin, not as predator versus prey, but as equals. The battle above Jupiter had transformed into something no one had ever seen before. Dominion ships, their once impenetrable shields stripped away, scattered in disarray. The human fleet pressed their advantage, but Walker knew the enemy was far from beaten. Cornered animals were often the most dangerous, and the Dominion fleet still outnumbered them greatly. Multiple energy spikes. Jones called from his sensor station. The Dominion ships are reconfiguring their weapons. They're increasing power output to compensate for lost shields. Through the Defiance viewport, Walker watched as the alien vessels began to regroup. The Supreme Commander's flagship remained at the center of their formation, but now smaller ships moved to surround it protectively. Without their shields, they would use their own ships as armor. Chief Miller, Walker called to engineering. Status of the resonance cascade. The system's stable, but cooling down, Miller replied between deep breaths. That pulse took more out of us than expected. We'll need at least 30 minutes before we can fire again. Walker nodded grimly. 30 minutes was an eternity in space combat. The Dominion wouldn't give them that much time. Already, their fleet was adopting new tactics, breaking into smaller groups that would be harder to hit with a single pulse. Captain, Lieutenant Rogers spoke up from her station. Admiral Stone is requesting instructions for the fleet. The Dominion ships are vulnerable, but they still have superior numbers and firepower. Before Walker could respond, the ship's sensors detected new movement. The Dominion fleet was launching fighters, thousands of them. Without their capital ship's shields to worry about, they could commit fully to an aggressive assault. They're changing tactics, Reed observed from tactical. Small, fast attacks from multiple directions. They're hoping to overwhelm us before we can fire the cascade again. Walker studied the tactical display, watching the swarm of enemy fighters approach. The Dominion was adapting faster than expected, turning what should have been their moment of triumph into a desperate race against time. Send word to the fleet, he ordered. Form defensive clusters. Use our point defense systems to cover each other. And get me Chief Miller again. The engineer's voice came through moments later, sounding exhausted but determined. Go ahead, Captain. Tom, I need options. The Dominion is switching to fighter swarms. Even without shields, they have enough ships to wear us down. Can we modify the resonance cascade for a shorter range, faster firing configuration? There was a pause filled with the sound of rapid typing. Maybe, Miller replied slowly. The quantum matrix is designed to generate a massive, expanding field. But if we narrow the focus, reduce the area of effect, we might be able to create something like a pulse cannon instead of a wave. How long? 20 minutes to reconfigure the emitters. But Captain, it would be much less powerful. We'd only affect ships within a few kilometers. Walker watched as the first wave of Dominion fighters began their attack run. Point defense lasers from the human fleet lit up space, destroying dozens of the smaller craft. But more kept coming. Do it, he ordered. We need something to even the odds. Lieutenant Reed, bring us about. We're going to show them that humans know how to adapt too. The Defiant turned gracefully, its advanced engines allowing maneuvers that other ships couldn't match. The human fleet moved with practiced precision, forming interlocking fields of fire that caught many fighters in deadly crossfire. But the Dominion had numbers on their side. For every fighter destroyed, 2 more took its place, and behind them, the larger ships were regrouping, preparing for a coordinated strike. Chief Miller reports the weapon modifications are at 40%, Rogers announced. But the Dominion fleet is moving to surround us. Heat signatures indicate they're charging weapons. The Supreme Commander's voice crackled through the comm system again. An impressive trick, humans, but not impressive enough. You've shown us your greatest weapon, and now we will show you why the Dominion has ruled space for 1,000 years. The alien fleet opened fire. Without their shields, they compensated with pure firepower. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes filled space, forcing the human ships into evasive maneuvers that broke up their defensive formation. Hull breach on Deck 4. Jones shouted as a shot struck home. Emergency force fields holding, but our armor won't take much more of this. Walker gripped his chair as another blast rocked the ship. The Defiant's revolutionary design was tough, but they were taking hits from dozens of ships at once. Around them, other human vessels were falling back, their hulls scared and burning from multiple impacts. 15 minutes to weapon reconfiguration, Rogers reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. We don't have 15 minutes, Reed responded, hands flying over his tactical console. The fighter swarms are pressing in from all sides. Our point defense grid is overloading. Walker watched as a human cruiser exploded under concentrated fire, its crew escaping in pods that the Dominion fighters casually destroyed. The sight sparked something in him, not just anger, but clarity. All power to engines, he ordered suddenly. Plot a course directly for the Supreme Commander's flagship. His bridge crew stared at him for a moment before understanding dawned. Without shields, the Dominion capital ships were relying on their fighters for protection, which meant they'll have to break off their attack to avoid hitting their own command ship. Reed finished the thought, already adjusting their course. The Defiant surged forward, its powerful engines pushing it through the swarm of fighters. As predicted, the smaller craft scattered to avoid collision with their flagship, creating a momentary gap in their attack. Chief Miller, Walker called out. Status. 10 more minutes. Miller shouted back over the sound of sparking electronics. The quantum matrix is realigning, but we're pushing the systems beyond safety limits. The Dominion isn't going to give us 10 minutes, Walker replied. We need that weapon now. Divert all non-essential power. Shut down everything we don't absolutely need. In engineering, Miller and his team worked frantically, pushing the experimental weapons systems to their absolute limit. Warning lights flashed across every console as they bypassed safety protocols and redlined power systems. The Defiant shuddered as more hits found their mark. Hull plating buckled, internal systems sparked and failed, but still they pressed on toward the Supreme Commander's massive vessel. 5 kilometers to target, Reed announced. The flagship is powering up its main gun. Chief Miller, Walker asked one final time. Not ready. Miller's voice was strained. The matrix isn't stable. If we fire now. If we don't fire, we're dead anyway. Walker cut him off. Do it, Chief. Trust in human engineering. Miller hesitated for just a moment, then slammed his hand down on the activation panel. The resonance cascade system hummed to life, but the sound was different now, higher pitched, almost screaming. The modified weapon fired, releasing not a wave, but a concentrated beam of quantum energy. It struck the Supreme Commander's flagship dead center, the focused power of the cascade tearing through the unshielded hull like paper. Secondary explosions rippled along the massive vessel's length as its power systems overloaded. The Dominion fighters broke formation, suddenly directionless without their command ship's guidance. But aboard the Defiant, celebrations would have to wait. The modified cascade had taken its toll on the ship's systems. Alarms blared throughout every deck as power fluctuations cascaded through the grid. Multiple system failures, Rogers reported. The quantum matrix is going critical. Walker looked out at the chaos they'd created. The burning Dominion flagship, the scattered fighter squadrons, the human fleet regrouping for another attack. They'd changed the course of the war, but at what cost? All hands, he announced shipwide. Brace for impact. This isn't over yet. The Defiant hung in space above Jupiter, its hull scared and burning from dozens of direct hits. Warning sirens blared through every deck as the modified resonance cascade system threatened to tear itself apart. But none of that mattered to the crew watching the Supreme Commander's flagship break apart, secondary explosions rippling along its length. Power systems critical. Miller's voice cracked through the comm. The quantum matrix is destabilizing. We need to shut it down now. Walker gripped his command chair as another tremor ran through the ship. Around them, the remains of the Dominion fleet hung in disarray, their fighters flying in confused patterns without central coordination. But he knew this moment of chaos wouldn't last long. "Status of the Supreme Commander's ship," he demanded. Jones worked his sensor console frantically. "Their main power core is going critical. Reading multiple escape pods launching. Sir, I'm detecting the Supreme Commander's personal transport among them." Walker leaned forward. The architect of humanity's near extinction was trying to escape. Part of him wanted to order the Defiant to pursue, to end this here and now. But another explosion rocked the ship, making the decision for him. "Chief Miller, shut down the cascade. All power to structural integrity and life support. Lieutenant Reed, get us clear of the flagship's blast radius." The Defiant's engines flared as they pulled away from the dying alien vessel. Behind them, the Supreme Commander's flagship finally succumbed to its wounds, exploding in a spectacular display that briefly rivaled Jupiter's brightness. "The blast is causing a chain reaction in the quantum fields," Miller reported. "It's affecting all nearby Dominion ships that were exposed to the cascade." Through the viewport, Walker watched as ship after ship lost power, their systems overloaded by the quantum backwash from their commander's destruction. What had started as a desperate gamble had turned into a devastating blow against the supposedly invincible Dominion fleet. "Sir," Rogers called out, "incoming transmission from Admiral Stone. The remaining Dominion capital ships are retreating. Their fighter screen is withdrawing to cover their escape." A cheer went up from the bridge crew, but Walker raised his hand for silence. "Chief Miller, what's the status of our ship?" There was a long pause before the engineer replied. "Not good, Captain. The modified cascade burned out most of our power conduits. We're running on emergency systems, and those won't last long. But sir, you need to see these readings. The quantum field effects we created, they're still spreading." Walker frowned. "Spreading how?" "It's like a ripple in space-time," Miller explained, his voice filled with wonder despite their situation. "The cascade didn't just disable their shields. It created a persistent effect that's propagating through subspace. Any Dominion ship that tries to raise shields within this region of space will have them fail immediately." The implications hit Walker like a physical blow. They hadn't just won a battle. They'd created a weapon that could deny the Dominion their greatest advantage across an entire sector of space. "Admiral Stone is requesting all ships report in," Rogers announced. "The human fleet took heavy losses, but we're still combat effective. 16 ships reporting major damage, 12 destroyed." Walker closed his eyes briefly, honoring the sacrifices made. When he opened them, his voice was firm. "Send word to the fleet. The Dominion will be back, and in greater numbers. But now, they know we can hurt them. More importantly, they know we can adapt." The next few hours passed in a blur of damage control and rescue operations. The human fleet worked together to recover escape pods and salvage what they could from the battlefield. The Defiant, despite its critical condition, became a symbol of hope as news of its achievement spread through the surviving ships. 3 days later, Walker stood in a hastily assembled conference room on Europa Base, Earth's last remaining outpost in the Jupiter system. Admiral Stone and the other fleet commanders had gathered to discuss the battle's implications. "The resonance cascade effect is still expanding," Miller explained to the assembled officers, his uniform wrinkled from endless hours of analysis. "Our best estimates suggest it will cover the entire Jupiter system within a week. Any Dominion ship that enters the affected space will be unable to raise shields." "And can they counter it?" one of the commanders asked. Miller shook his head. "Not quickly. The quantum principles we uncovered, they're fundamental to how their shield technology works. They'd need to completely redesign their defense systems from the ground up." Admiral Stone stood slowly, his aged face showing both exhaustion and determination. Then we press our advantage. The Defiant has shown us the way forward. Every ship in the fleet will be fitted with a resonance cascade system as soon as possible. Sir, Walker interjected, the Defiant systems were experimental, dangerous. We nearly lost the ship. Then we'll improve them, Stone replied firmly. That's what humans do, isn't it? We learn, we adapt, we overcome. The Dominion thought they had us beaten, but they didn't understand what they were really fighting. He walked to the viewport, staring out at Jupiter's massive form. They saw us as primitives playing with technology we didn't understand. But they forgot something crucial. Sometimes not knowing something is impossible is the first step to making it possible. The room fell silent as his words sank in. Every person there had lost friends, family, entire worlds to the Dominion's aggression. But now, for the first time, they had hope. The Supreme Commander escaped, Walker reminded them. He'll return with an even larger fleet. Let him come, Stone said, turning back to face them. When he does, he'll find more than one human ship waiting for him. The Defiant showed us the way. Now it's time to show the galaxy what humanity can really do. As the meeting concluded, Walker found himself back on the Defiant's bridge. The ship was still undergoing repairs, its systems being rebuilt better and stronger than before. Engineers from across the fleet swarmed through its corridors, studying every aspect of the revolutionary design that had changed the course of the war. Captain, Miller called from the doorway. The first set of improvements to the cascade system are ready for review. We think we can increase its range by 40% while reducing power consumption. Walker smiled. Already they were improving on the original design, making it more efficient, more effective. That was humanity's true strength, not just creating something new, but constantly making it better. Get to work, Chief, he ordered. The Dominion will be back, and I want the Defiant ready to show them something new when they arrive. As Miller left, Walker looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Supreme Commander was gathering his forces, planning his revenge. But things would be different next time. The human warship that changed everything had done more than win a battle. It had given humanity back its future. The war wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But now the Dominion would face an enemy they had never truly understood, humans who knew they could win. The Deep Space Patrol ship Stargazer drifted silently through the darkness at the edge of human space. Commander James Walker stood at the bridge's main viewport, his weathered face reflecting off the reinforced glass. 20 years of space patrol had taught him to trust his gut. And right now, his gut was screaming that something wasn't right. Sir, sensors are picking up an anomaly at bearing 047, reported Tom Evans from his station. The young officer's fingers danced across his console, bringing up more detailed readings. It's big, whatever it is. Walker turned from the viewport, his boots making soft sounds against the deck plating. Define big, Lieutenant. Bigger than anything we've got in the fleet, sir. Initial readings suggest it's nearly 4 kilometers in length. A low whistle escaped Walker's lips. The largest ships in the United Earth Defense Fleet barely reached 1 kilometer. He walked over to Evans's station, studying the preliminary scans. The object was holding position, showing no signs of movement or power emissions. Get us closer, but maintain safe distance. Full sensor sweep, Walker ordered. He activated the ship-wide comm. All hands, this is the commander. Battle stations, this is not a drill. Red warning lights bathed the corridors in their dull glow as crew members rushed to their posts. Walker watched as the Stargazer's tactical officer, Lisa Green, brought the ship's weapons online. Better safe than sorry in unexplored space. As they drew closer, the massive shape began to take form on their viewing screens. What they saw made every person on the bridge stop and stare. It was unmistakably a warship, but unlike anything they'd ever encountered. Its hull was angular and aggressive, covered in what appeared to be weapon ports and launch tubes. But what caught Walker's attention wasn't its size or its obvious military purpose. It was the markings on its hull. "Those are English letters," Green said, her voice barely above a whisper. Walker leaned forward, squinting at the enhanced image. There, clear as day on the ship's hull, was writing in standard Earth English, "UES PARADOX 2947. "That's impossible," Evans muttered. "That's 490 years in the future." Walker felt a chill run down his spine. The year was 2457, and they were looking at a ship that claimed to be from 5 centuries ahead of them. Either this was an elaborate hoax, or they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. "Any power readings?" Walker asked, keeping his voice steady despite the growing unease in his stomach. "Minimal, sir," replied Green. "Life support seems to be functioning at a basic level, but main systems appear to be dormant. No signs of crew, no active weapons, no shields. She's just floating there." Walker made his decision. "Send a detailed report back to Fleet Command. Request immediate support. In the meantime, we're going to take a closer look." He turned to his executive officer, Mike Rogers. "Prepare a boarding team. Full hazard gear, weapons cold but ready. I'll lead the team myself." Rogers began to protest, but Walker cut him off with a raised hand. "This could be first contact, a trap, or something we can't even imagine. I need my best people on this, and I need to see it with my own eyes." An hour later, Walker led a team of 6 through the Stargazer's airlock and into space. Their magnetic boots engaged as they landed on the mysterious vessel's hull. Up close, the ship was even more impressive. The metal beneath their feet was smooth and unmarked, showing no signs of micrometeorite impacts or space debris, as if it had just left the shipyard. "Engineering, what do you make of this hull material?" Walker asked through his suit's comm. Chief Engineer Roy Thompson ran his scanner over the surface. "Sir, these readings don't make sense. The material composition, it's like nothing in our database. The molecular structure seems to be actively repairing itself. Self-healing metal. In 2457, that's still theoretical. They found an airlock, and surprisingly, it responded to their universal emergency codes." The team exchanged worried glances. How could a ship from the future recognize current emergency protocols? As the airlock cycled, Walker's mind raced with possibilities, none of them comforting. The interior of the ship was dark, illuminated only by their suit lights and occasional strips of emergency lighting along the floor. The corridors were wide enough for 3 people to walk side by side, with ceiling heights that suggested the designers had efficiency in mind rather than comfort. "Atmosphere is breathable," Thompson reported, checking his instruments. "Temperature 18 degrees Celsius, standard pressure. Life support's functioning perfectly." Walker kept his helmet on anyway. "Stay alert. We don't know what automated systems might still be active." They made their way through the ship, following the emergency lighting that seemed to activate just ahead of them, as if the ship was guiding them somewhere. The architecture was clearly human in design, but everything felt advanced, streamlined, evolved. "Commander," called out Security Officer Jack Miller, "you need to see this." They had reached what appeared to be a command center. As they entered, lights flickered on, and holographic displays sprang to life around them. The technology was leagues beyond anything they had, but the layout was intuitive enough that Walker could recognize it as a bridge. "Can anyone read these displays?" Walker asked, studying the holographic text floating in the air. "Sir," Evans said, his voice shaking slightly. "They're in English. Look at this one. It's showing the ship's log. Last entry dated August 15, 2947. Walker approached the main console. As he did, a soft blue light emerged from the ceiling, coalescing into a human-sized hologram. The figure was clearly an artificial intelligence avatar, designed to look like a middle-aged man in a uniform they didn't recognize. "Welcome aboard the UES Paradox," the hologram said, its voice perfectly human. "I've been waiting for you, Commander Walker." The team raised their weapons instinctively, but Walker held up his hand. "At ease," he ordered, though his own heart was racing. "How do you know my name?" The hologram smiled, but there was sadness in its expression. "Because you sent me here, Commander. Or rather, you will send me here. 490 years from now, to be exact." Walker removed his helmet, needing to face this situation with his own eyes. "Explain." "This ship is humanity's last hope," the hologram said. "I am its caretaker, an artificial intelligence tasked with ensuring it arrives at the right time, to the right people. We have much to discuss, Commander, and very little time. Humanity faces an extinction-level threat, and this ship, impossible as it may seem, is here to prevent it." The hologram gestured, and the bridge came fully to life. Screens showed star maps, weapon systems, and technology that made their most advanced ships look primitive in comparison. But what caught Walker's attention was a countdown timer prominently displayed on the main screen. "What is that counting down to?" he asked, dreading the answer. "First contact," the hologram replied grimly, "with an enemy that will nearly destroy humanity, unless we change things here and now." Walker looked at his team, then back at the hologram. Everything they knew about physics, about time, about what was and wasn't possible, had just been thrown out the window. But one thing was clear: they had found something that would change humanity's future forever. "Tell me everything," Walker said, and the hologram nodded, beginning a story that would reshape human history. The hologram's blue light cast strange shadows across the bridge as Commander Walker and his team listened to its explanation. They had been aboard the Paradox for 3 hours now, and each new revelation made Walker's head spin more than the last. "The ship's main computer contains detailed records of our wars with the Swarm," the hologram explained, bringing up terrifying images of massive dark shapes moving between stars. "They're a collective intelligence that spreads through space like a virus, consuming everything in their path." Thompson raised his hand to touch one of the floating images, his fingers passing through the holographic display. "These energy readings are off the scale. Each of these things is the size of a small moon." "Correct," the hologram confirmed. "The Swarm builds their ships by consuming entire planets. In our timeline, humanity wasn't prepared. First contact occurred when they woke from their dormant state in the Carina Nebula. Earth had no warning." Walker paced the bridge, his boots making no sound on the strange metal floor. The ship seemed to absorb all unnecessary noise, making their voices sound oddly isolated. "You mentioned this ship has technology that breaks the laws of physics. Show me." The hologram nodded, and the bridge lights dimmed. New displays appeared, showing schematics of the ship's systems. The Paradox isn't just a warship. It's a testbed for humanity's most advanced technologies. The hull is made of adaptive nanomaterial that can repair itself and change properties based on threats. Our weapons use principles of quantum mechanics that won't be discovered for another 3 centuries. Lisa Green studied the weapon schematics with professional interest. "These aren't just guns, are they? They're reality disruption weapons." "In simple terms, yes," the hologram agreed. "The Swarm's ships are virtually indestructible by conventional means, so we learned to bend space itself to destroy them. But the ship's most important feature is its temporal displacement drive." The hologram brought up a new schematic, showing an engine design that made Walker's eyes hurt to look at. Parts of it seemed to exist in multiple places at once, and some components appeared to be moving backward through time. "That's impossible," Thompson whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. After all, they were standing on an impossible ship. "The temporal drive is what brought us here," the hologram continued. "But using it took most of our power reserves. The ship is currently operating on backup systems, while the main reactor slowly recharges. That's why we needed you to find us at exactly this moment. We have 3 months until the Swarm's scout ship launches. 3 months to prepare humanity for what's coming." Walker turned to Evans. "Get a secure channel to Fleet Command. They need to see this. But before Evans could move, warning lights flashed across the bridge. The hologram's expression changed to one of concern. "We have company. 3 ships just dropped out of FTL travel nearby. Their signatures match known pirate vessels in your time period." Walker's training kicked in. "My ship is out there alone. We need tow." "Commander," the hologram interrupted. "This might be an opportunity. The Paradox's defensive systems are still operational. Perhaps a demonstration would help convince your superiors about the validity of our claims." The bridge's main viewport cleared, showing the space around them. 3 rusty-looking ships were approaching the Stargazer, which looked tiny next to the massive Paradox. Walker could see his crew positioning for a fight, but they were outgunned 3-1. "What are you suggesting?" Walker asked the hologram. "The Paradox has non-lethal options. We can disable the pirates without destroying their ships. It would demonstrate our capabilities while saving your crew." Walker nodded. "Do it." The hologram smiled, and the bridge came fully alive for the first time. Lights blazed, systems hummed to life, and Walker felt a subtle vibration through the deck. On the viewport, he watched as invisible waves of energy pulsed out from the Paradox. When they touched the pirate ships, all 3 vessels suddenly went dark, drifting helplessly in space. "Their systems will reboot in approximately 1 hour," the hologram explained. "No permanent damage, but they won't be a threat." Walker's comm crackled. "Commander," Roger's voice came through, excited and confused. "Sir, did you see that? What just happened?" "I saw it, Mike. Send boarding teams to secure those ships. I'll explain everything soon." Walker turned back to the hologram. "That was impressive, but if the swarm is as powerful as you say, we'll need more than fancy shutdown pulses to stop them." "Of course. That was just the ship's point defense system. Would you like to see our main weapons?" Before Walker could answer, Evans called out from a console he'd been studying. "Commander, I've found something in the ship's logs. It's you, sir." The hologram's expression turned grave as Evans activated a recorded message. A much older version of Walker appeared on the screen. His hair was white, his face bore new scars, but his eyes held the same determination. "If you're seeing this, then the Paradox made it," the older Walker said. "I know how crazy this all seems. I remember standing where you are now, trying to make sense of it all. But everything the ship's AI tells you is true. The swarm is coming, and we have one chance to stop them before they destroy everything we love." The recording continued, showing footage of massive battles, of Earth's cities in flames, of humanity fighting a desperate war against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. The older Walker explained how they'd found the swarm's weakness too late, how the temporal drive was their last desperate gamble. "Don't make the same mistakes we did," the recording concluded. "Don't wait. Don't debate. Act now, while they're still sleeping. The ship knows what to do. Trust it. Trust yourself. Good luck." The bridge was silent after the recording ended. Walker's team looked at him, waiting for his reaction. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of 2 timelines resting on his decisions. "Show me everything," he said to the hologram. "Every weapon, every system, every piece of technology we have. If we're going to convince Fleet Command to launch a preemptive strike against an enemy they've never seen, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." The hologram nodded, and new displays appeared around them. As Walker and his team began to learn the secrets of humanity's most advanced warship, alarms were already going off in Fleet Command. The Paradox's arrival had changed everything, and there was no going back. In the darkness of space, the massive ship hung silently, its hull reflecting distant starlight. Inside, the future of humanity was taking shape, guided by a commander who was both learning and teaching himself how to fight a war that hadn't happened yet. The countdown to the swarm's awakening continued, marking the time humanity had left to prepare for the greatest fight in its history. Fleet Admiral Marcus stood at the head of the Emergency Council table, his face grim as he studied the holographic projections showing the Paradox. 2 weeks had passed since Walker's discovery, and Earth's military leadership had gathered in the underground command center beneath New Geneva to decide humanity's next move. "Let me be clear about what you're suggesting, Commander Walker," the Admiral said, his voice echoing in the silent room. "You want us to launch a preemptive strike against an alien species we've never met, based on information from a ship that claims to be from the future." Walker stood straight, meeting the Admiral's gaze. "The evidence is irrefutable, sir. The Paradox's technology alone proves its origin. Dr. Torres, please explain your findings." Dr. Maria Torres stepped forward, her dark hair streaked with gray. As Earth's leading physicist, her opinion carried weight. "The ship's temporal drive isn't theoretical. It works. We've confirmed it by studying the temporal wake still surrounding the vessel. This ship truly is from our future." The room erupted in murmurs. Admiral Marcus raised his hand for silence. "Even if we accept this, and that's a big if, you're talking about starting a war." "With respect, sir," Walker replied, "we're talking about preventing our extinction." The hologram from the Paradox, which they'd taken to calling guide, appeared in the center of the room. Earth's leaders had grown somewhat used to its presence over the past 2 weeks, though some still flinched at its sudden appearances. "Perhaps a more detailed demonstration is in order," Guide suggested. "The Paradox's memory banks contain full recordings of the first swarm attack. Would you like to see how the war began in our timeline?" Admiral Marcus nodded slowly. The room darkened, and suddenly they were surrounded by a 3-dimensional recreation of Earth space. They watched as massive shapes emerged from FTL travel. Dark, organic-looking ships that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The recreation showed Earth's defense fleet engaging the swarm. Humanity's best weapons barely scratched the alien vessels. Then they watched in horror as the swarm ships released countless smaller creatures that tore through Earth's defenses like paper. "Stop," Marcus commanded, his face pale. The projection froze on an image of Sydney in flames. "Those creatures, they're biological weapons. The swarm is a collective," Guide explained. "Each drone is part of the whole. They don't communicate. They simply are. Their ships are grown, not built, using the resources they harvest from conquered worlds. In our timeline, humanity lost 2 billion lives in the first day of fighting." Walker stepped forward again. "But now we have a chance to strike first, while they're dormant. The Paradox has mapped their location. Their main fleet sleeps in the Carina Nebula, waiting for the scout ship to wake them. We have 2 months before that happens." "And what if we fail?" asked General Rivers, her weathered face showing deep concern. "If we attack and don't completely destroy them, we'll start the very war we're trying to prevent. That's why we need to commit everything," Walker argued. "The Paradox can upgrade our current fleet with its technology. Not to full future specs, but enough to give us a fighting chance. We've already begun modifying the Stargazer as a test case." The hologram brought up new images, showing the Stargazer's transformation. Its weapons now glowed with the same strange energy as the Paradox's systems. The ship's hull had been enhanced with the same self-repairing metal. "The modifications are holding stable," Dr. Torres added. "We can upgrade our entire defense fleet within 6 weeks if we start now." Admiral Marcus walked around the table, studying the frozen image of the swarm ships. "The political fallout from this will be enormous. Starting a war based on future intelligence, some will call it madness." "Better than the alternative," Walker said quietly. He nodded to Guide, who played one final recording. The older Walker appeared again, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a group of children in worn clothing, their faces dirty but determined. "These are the last human children," the recording said, "born in underground bunkers, never seeing the sun. They're the reason we built the Paradox, the reason we broke the laws of physics and time itself. Because humanity deserves better than extinction. These kids deserve a future." The recording ended, leaving the room in heavy silence. Admiral Marcus looked around at the gathered leaders, reading their expressions. Some showed fear, others determination. All understood the weight of the decision before them. If we do this, Marcus said slowly, we do it right. I want every scrap of tactical data from that ship analyzed. Every weakness the swarm has, every strategy that worked against them. We're not just copying your future tech, we're going to improve on it. Walker felt hope rising in his chest. The Paradox's AI can interface with our tactical systems. It can run simulations, help us plan the perfect first strike. Sir, General Rivers interrupted. What about the public? How do we explain this? Marcus smiled grimly. We don't. Not yet. This stays classified at the highest level. As far as the world knows, we're conducting routine fleet exercises. If we succeed, they'll never need to know how close we came to extinction. If we fail, he let the thought hang unfinished. There's something else you should know, Guide said, its holographic form shifting slightly. The Paradox isn't just a warship, it's a seed ship. Explain, Marcus demanded. In its data banks, this ship carries the sum total of human scientific advancement up to the year 2947. Medical cures, clean energy solutions, faster than light travel. Everything humanity achieved before the swarm arrived. It was meant as a backup, in case the worst happened. A way to give humanity a head start rebuilding. The implications hit everyone in the room. Even if they prevented the war, this ship would advance human technology by centuries. The future was literally in their hands. Commander Walker, Marcus said, his decision made. You have operational command of this mission. Work with Guide to begin fleet modifications immediately. I want detailed attack plans on my desk in 48 hours. Yes, sir, Walker replied, saluting. As the meeting broke up, Walker felt the weight of two timelines on his shoulders. In one, humanity had faced the swarm unprepared and nearly died. In another, the one he was building, they would be ready. The war that shouldn't exist was about to begin. And this time, humanity would strike first. On the main screen, the countdown continued its relentless march. 2 months until the scout ship would wake. 2 months to prepare humanity for the greatest battle in its history. 2 months to change the future. The massive shipyards orbiting Mars buzzed with activity as workers swarmed over Earth's defense fleet. Red warning lights flashed constantly as engineers installed the Paradox's technology on ship after ship. With just 3 weeks left until the swarm scout's awakening, every second counted. Walker stood in the Paradox's command center, watching the progress through the main viewport. The ship had become humanity's most advanced teaching tool, its AI working around the clock to train crews in operating the new weapons and defense systems. Status report, he called out to his team. 70% of the fleet has been upgraded, Thompson replied from his station. The chief engineer looked tired but satisfied. The newer ships are accepting the modifications better than expected. The self-repairing hull technology is spreading faster than we projected. Dr. Torres looked up from her console, where complex equations floated in the air. The quantum weaponry is stable across all platforms. We've even managed to improve the efficiency by 13% over the original designs. Walker nodded, allowing himself to feel a moment of pride. In just 6 weeks, humanity had advanced its technology by centuries. But would it be enough? Guide, he called out, and the AI's hologram appeared beside him. Show me the latest simulation results. The air filled with a tactical display showing their planned attack on the swarm's dormant fleet. Hundreds of upgraded Earth ships, led by the Paradox, would emerge from FTL travel directly above the sleeping alien armada. Their first strike would use the Paradox's most powerful weapon, a quantum cascade that would tear apart the fabric of space itself. Success probability has increased to 67%, Guide reported. If we can destroy 40% of their ships in the initial strike, the remaining swarm vessels will be too disorganized to mount an effective defense. And the scout ship, Walker asked. Our advance team is in position, Guide confirmed. A new display showed 5 ships hiding in the debris field near the scout's location. They're ready to prevent its awakening if anything goes wrong with our main assault. Walker's comm unit chimed. Commander, Admiral Marcus's voice came through. We need you in the war room. There's a situation. 15 minutes later, Walker stood before the Admiral and Earth's other military leaders. The atmosphere in the room was tense. We have a leak, Marcus announced without preamble. Someone talked. The public knows about the paradox. Walker's heart sank. They'd managed to keep the operation secret for weeks, explaining away the fleet modifications as routine upgrades. But now, how bad is it? He asked. General Rivers activated a display showing news feeds from around the world. Headlines screamed about time travel, future wars, and alien invasions. Protests had already begun outside military bases. Half the population thinks we're lying, Rivers said. The other half thinks we're about to start an unjustified war. We have peace groups demanding we attempt communication with the swarm first. That would be suicide, Walker argued. The recordings from my future self prove the swarm doesn't communicate. They consume. That's all they do. We know that, Marcus said heavily. But the public doesn't have access to those records. All they see is us preparing for a massive attack on an unknown species that hasn't done anything to us yet. Then show them, a new voice said. Everyone turned to see Guide's hologram appearing in the center of the room. Show them everything. Walker understood immediately. The full recordings. Not just the tactical data, but the human cost. The refugee camps. The last cities. The children. Marcus shook his head. The panic will be nothing compared to what happens if we don't act. Walker interrupted. Guide, can you broadcast to every screen on Earth? Yes, the AI replied. The paradox's quantum communications can override any receiving device. We can reach everyone simultaneously. Marcus stood silent for a long moment, weighing the options. Finally, he nodded. Do it. Show them why we have no choice. What followed was 2 hours of unfiltered truth. On every screen on Earth, every phone, television, and computer, people watched the future that had been. They saw the swarm's arrival, the destruction of cities, the death of billions. They saw humanity's desperate last stand, the years of fighting, the final plan to send the paradox back in time. But most importantly, they saw the hope, the upgraded fleet, the new weapons, the chance to prevent it all from happening. When the broadcast ended, the protests outside military bases had transformed into recruitment lines. Public opinion has shifted. Rivers reported, reading the incoming data, 93% support for military action. We're getting volunteers from every nation on Earth. Walker turned to Marcus. Sir, we need to accelerate the timeline. Now that our preparations are public, we have to assume the swarm might have some way of detecting our activities. We can't risk them waking early. Agreed, Marcus said. How soon can the fleet be ready? Walker consulted with Guide silently through his neural link. Another piece of future tech they'd adapted. 4 days to complete the essential upgrades. We'll have to finish the rest en route. Make it 3, Marcus ordered. I want every ship ready for FTL jump by then. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we don't stop until the threat is eliminated. As the meeting broke up, Walker felt a strange sense of déjà vu. How many times had his future self stood in similar rooms, making similar plans? But this time was different. This time, they weren't fighting for survival. They were fighting to prevent the war entirely. Back aboard the Paradox, Walker walked the now familiar corridors to the ship's heart, a massive chamber housing the temporal drive. The device pulsed with impossible energy, parts of it existing in multiple times at once. This was humanity's greatest achievement, born from their darkest hour. 3 days, he said to Guide's hologram, which had followed him. Can we do it? We already did, Guide replied with a slight smile. In another timeline, one that will now never exist. But the question isn't whether we can do it, it's what we'll become afterward. This ship carries more than weapons, Commander. It carries a future where humanity reaches for the stars not in fear, but in hope. Walker placed his hand on the temporal drive's housing, feeling the subtle vibrations of power flowing through it. Then let's make sure we live to see that future. Above Mars, the upgraded fleet assembled in formation. Ship after ship took position, their new weapons glowing with quantum energy, their hulls rippling with self-repairing nanomaterials. At their center, the Paradox hung like a sword of Damocles, an impossible ship preparing to prevent an impossible war. The countdown to humanity's first preemptive strike continued its relentless march. 3 days until they would change the future. 3 days until they would wake the sleeping giants. 3 days until they would learn if one temporal paradox could prevent the extinction of the human race. The vast emptiness of the Carina Nebula lit up with the sudden arrival of humanity's fleet. Nearly 300 ships dropped out of FTL travel simultaneously, their upgraded hulls gleaming with quantum energy. At their center, the Paradox emerged like an avenging angel, its massive form dwarfing even the largest Earth vessels. Walker stood on the Paradox's bridge, his hands gripping the tactical console as he surveyed the scene before them. In the nebula's swirling gases, dark shapes floated motionless. The dormant swarm fleet, each bioship was the size of a small moon, their black surfaces absorbing both light and sensor scans. All ships report ready, Evans announced from his station. Quantum weapons charge. Shield harmonics synchronized. Scout ship status, Walker asked, his voice steady despite the tension. Strike team confirms the Scout remains dormant, Guide's hologram reported. They're in position to prevent its awakening. Walker took a deep breath. Everything they'd prepared for came down to this moment. He opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Commander Walker. You know why we're here. In another timeline, these creatures destroyed our world. Today, we make sure that future never happens. Stand ready. He nodded to Guide. The AI's hologram expanded, interfacing directly with the Paradox's systems. The massive ship's quantum core began to pulse with increasing power. Primary weapon charging, Guide announced. Quantum cascade will reach critical mass in 30 seconds. On the tactical display, Walker watched as the fleet moved into attack formation. They'd drilled this hundreds of times in simulations. The Paradox would fire first, its quantum cascade creating a space-time rupture that would tear apart a portion of the swarm fleet. Then, while the survivors were still recovering, the Earth ships would strike from multiple vectors with their upgraded weapons. 20 seconds, Guide counted down. Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. Movement, Evans shouted. The swarm, they're waking up. Walker's blood ran cold as he watched the massive alien ships beginning to stir. Their black surfaces rippled like liquid metal as dormant systems came online. How? Walker demanded. The scout ship is still sleeping. Unknown, Guide replied, its hologram flickering with rapid calculations. Possibility. They detected our quantum energy signatures. The future tech may have triggered a defense mechanism. Time to full cascade, Walker asked urgently. 15 seconds, but the swarm ships will be combat ready in 10. Walker made his decision instantly. All ships, break formation. Initiate attack pattern Delta. Don't let them coordinate. The Earth fleet scattered just as the first swarm ship opened fire. A beam of dark energy sliced through space where their formation had been seconds before. More swarm vessels were awakening, their organic forms writhing as they prepared for battle. Cascade in 5 seconds, Guide announced. Walker watched as the nearest swarm ships began launching smaller forms, the dreaded drones that had devastated Earth in the original timeline. All ships, activate point defense grids. Don't let those drones reach you. Space lit up with weapons fire. The upgraded Earth ships proved their worth as quantum beams and energy pulses destroyed wave after wave of drones. But more swarm ships were waking every second. "Cascade ready," Guide called out. "Fire," Walker ordered. The Paradox's main weapon activated, and reality itself seemed to scream. A tear in spacetime erupted in the heart of the swarm fleet, the quantum cascade ripping apart everything it touched. 3 of the massive bioships were caught in the effect, their forms twisting and fragmenting as space itself shredded them to atoms. But the remaining swarm vessels reacted with terrifying speed. They began to merge, their liquid metal forms flowing together into fewer but larger ships. "They're adapting," Dr. Torres called out from her station. "The quantum cascade changed their molecular structure. They're becoming resistant." Walker had feared something like this. The swarm's ability to evolve mid-battle had been documented in the future records. But they'd prepared for this too. "Guide, initiate Protocol Omega." The AI's hologram smiled grimly. Protocol Omega activated. All ships synchronize quantum frequencies to the following pattern. As the command went out, every Earth ship's weapons changed tone. The quantum energy they emitted shifted to match the Paradox's unique temporal signature. When they fired again, their beams carried fragments of future time itself. The effect was devastating. Where the combined swarm ships had been shrugging off normal quantum attacks, these temporal-infused beams cut through them like fire through ice. Their adaptive abilities couldn't cope with weapons that existed partially outside of normal time. "It's working," Evans shouted. Swarm ships showing signs of molecular breakdown. But the aliens weren't finished. The remaining ships suddenly pulled back, gathering into a tight formation. Their surfaces began to pulse with dark energy. "Energy spike," Torres warned. "They're trying to open a dimensional rift, probably calling for reinforcements." "Not today," Walker said quietly. He opened a channel to the strike team near the scout ship. "Execute Plan B now." Near the sleeping scout, 5 Earth ships activated special devices provided by the Paradox. Together, they created a temporal lock, a bubble of frozen time that trapped the scout ship in perfect stasis. It would never wake, never send its signal to the rest of the swarm species. Back in the main battle, Walker watched as the remaining swarm ships struggled to open their rift. But without the scout's signal, their efforts were uncoordinated, weakened. "All ships," Walker commanded, "full attack. Everything you have. Don't let them recover." The entire Earth fleet opened fire simultaneously. Hundreds of temporal quantum beams struck the swarm formation from all directions. Unable to adapt quickly enough, unable to call for help, the massive bioships began to break apart. "Guide," Walker said, "charge the cascade one more time. Let's finish this." The Paradox's weapon powered up again, drawing on its reserves of future energy. The quantum cascade fired into the heart of the dying swarm fleet, and this time there was no escape. The fabric of space-time ripped open one final time, consuming the remaining alien ships in a maelstrom of temporal energy. When the light faded, the nebula was empty except for the Earth fleet. Debris from the swarm ships dissolved into nothingness, their impossible biology unable to survive without the collective consciousness controlling it. Walker slumped in his command chair, exhaustion finally catching up with him. "Casualties." 12 ships lost, Evans reported, his voice thick with emotion. But their crews managed to eject. Rescue operations are underway. The scout ship remains in temporal stasis, Guide confirmed. It will never wake. The signal will never be sent. The future we came from, it no longer exists. Walker looked around the bridge of the impossible warship that had changed humanity's destiny. "So what happens now?" "To the Paradox, to you." Guide's hologram smiled. "The timeline has changed. The future where we were created no longer exists, but we do exist, here and now. The Paradox carries centuries of human advancement, medical cures, clean energy, faster than light travel. Everything humanity achieved before the swarm arrived. We can give your people a better future than the one we came from." "A future without the swarm," Walker said, finally allowing himself to smile. A future where those children get to see the sun. Above them, the nebula's gases swirled peacefully, showing no sign of the battle that had just prevented a war that would never happen. The paradox hung among the Earth fleet, a warship that shouldn't exist, but did, and in existing, had changed everything. Humanity had faced its greatest test and emerged victorious. And now, with the knowledge and technology of centuries at their disposal, they could reach for the stars not in desperation, but in hope. The future was theirs to write.